For me today, we have the perfect word for what I'm going to talk about, and that's talking about IT and information. How many of you have heard about 23andMe, the company, and maybe the latest news with the FDA and the kerfuffle between 23andMe and them? 23andMe is a company that does personal genomics testing, and the FDA has told them to stop doing what they do. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why and explain more about personal genomics testing so you might understand this better, and give you my opinion on why I think it's wrong for the FDA to restrict them like this. Is this ready to go? Ready for it yet? Just wanted to make sure that was warmed up. So, in my opinion, there's a bit of a witch hunt. The FDA has told them to stop distributing their spit kit, as it's called. And I know Beth's done this. I don't know if anybody else has actually gone through the service, but basically what you do is you go on their website. So there's a lot of IT involved. You request the little kit, you register just like you would register and buy something on Amazon.com. And a couple days later, a little tube shows up in a package, and you are asked to fill the saliva up to a little line. And it's a little gross, but you do it. My wife did it also and managed to not gag or anything. But you put it back in the little box they give you and you send it back. And a couple weeks later, you get an email telling you that they're done processing your results, and you log in and you get lots of great information. And for me, there's even kind of more of a personal story involved, as about the time that I was doing this, and maybe even part of my motivation for doing it was that I was starting to have what I felt was like a neurological condition, and I found out my brother also was having the same symptoms or close to it. And so about the time I got my results was when he was going to the neurologist to get checked out. I logged into the site, was looking through the different conditions, and one of them that came up was something called the central tremor. So these are some of the results here. They categorize it on things that you have an increased risk based on your susceptibility based on the genes that they find. And one of them here that I've highlighted is the one that actually he was diagnosed with. And it was interesting because I'd seen these like a week before, and I kind of passed by that thinking, okay, that's not what I have. But talking with him and sharing symptom information, I realized that that is what he had. And I texted him, and as I texted him, he was in the doctor getting diagnosed with that condition. And basically what it causes tremors, and it's relatively benign. It will progress, but it is an inherited disease. And apparently I probably got it from my mother, who passed away before she could exhibit the symptoms. We probably got it from her father, who died in a car accident before he was old enough to exhibit the symptoms. So we wouldn't have known about this otherwise. The pastor of our church has it, and he'll show you that he has it, and he takes some medicine for it. But it's just, it really drives home the impact of genes and how they affect us more than probably we would have ever realized, or more than I ever realized. So this is a condition that's called autosomal dominant, which means that if you have a parent that has it, you will have this. I mean, it's just, it may not develop as early, it may take a lot longer to show, but eventually it will show. So the FDA's concern is, of course, that I could have logged in and started to worry about many of these other conditions, male infertility, which I'm not, I'm done with that. Wasn't too concerned about that. This one looks a little scary. Chronic lymphocyte leukemia, very scary, right? But it's relatively small odds. They only show the risk for the ones that are much stronger and they're more confident about. But for example, rheumatoid arthritis, it's something that only happens when you get older. But if I had seen something like heart condition, or maybe if I was a female and it recognized that I have the BRCA1 or BRCA2 genes, which are markers for breast cancer, it might cause me to go to the doctor and trigger unnecessary medical activity, a mastectomy, for example, right? And so that's the concern, is that people will overreact. It will cause them to get medical procedures that they otherwise don't need. And of course, as we know, doctors aren't perfect, and there's actually hundreds of thousands of unnecessary surgeries done already every year. So is it going to get worse or better? And going back to the knowledge is power thing that Beth mentioned, that's actually their slogan for the company. Knowledge is power. And so there's been an awful lot of talk for years. If you had the chance to know you were going to get something horrible, would you want to know or not? And for me, I would like to know, but it's a personal decision, obviously, that each of you would have to make. I highly recommend it. For example, I found out that I have a lower risk of Alzheimer's, or I think it was Alzheimer's. And apparently, I also have the gene that causes your arms to move around when giving speeches, too. Okay, I made that one up. But, you know, for example, here's some of the other information that's very valuable. They tell you that you have certain sensitivity to drugs. So this is a drug thinner, and if I get prescribed to it, apparently I need a smaller dose than other people. Sensitivity to a bacteria that is in oysters and fresh fruit, you know, but I'm probably not going to change my lifestyle. I didn't already eat oysters, so that one's just going to go nowhere. But other things, other drugs, it's not fitting on the screen right, but you get the idea. And the good news for me is there's 52 very serious disorders that they tested for, and I don't have any of those. You know, meanwhile, I do apparently have this one particular one, and also for me personally too, I was very interested because I have something called retinitis pigmentosa, which I found out I had this summer. Runs in my family. It's an inherited eye disease that often causes blindness. My sister actually has it and is legally blind, but somehow she had a worse mutation or something. But they didn't actually cover that one. It's not common enough for them to test for it. So there's 3 billion combinations of different information in the genes that they could be testing for, and they test for what's called just to get a little bit technical, they test for something called SNPs or SNP, single nucleotide polymorphisms. So they're only looking at for places where there's often mutations. So that's how they derive this information. But there's a load of information. And to me, as somebody in IT, this is just like, wow, you can actually download that information yourself. And there's an open source tool that you can run that will give you even more information than what this company will provide for you. So going back to the kerfuffle between them and the FDA, I can go to other places and get that same information. I can go to Ancestry.com, for example, where they promote it as a way to help find relatives. So, for example, you want to, and this company does as well. I have 2 second or third cousins that have also gotten tested, and they help to connect you socially. That's a big part of this as well. So you can, at that point, for example, especially with the retinitis pigmentosa, I could start interacting with those other family members and maybe put them at ease, or we could have a conversation about how it's impacting me and what I'm doing to work around it. So it seems like there's an awful lot that could come from this to improve people's lives, but meanwhile, there's this concern, which may be somewhat legitimate in some people's eyes, about this, unnecessary medical procedures, or maybe if you want to go toward the conspiracy angle, the insurance companies may want to block it because they'll have to pay out for these procedures that didn't need to be done otherwise. And meanwhile, the insurance companies are blocked from accessing this information, so they see it as unfair to their business. And as well, it's sort of like gun control, right? I mean, you can go print out a gun on a 3D printer now. I can get this genetic information done elsewhere and print it out. But how many people are going to go do that? Probably not many, right? But to 23andMe's defense, whenever there's something critical in there, for example, and I wish I would have captured that on a screenshot, but for example, I mentioned the breast cancer genes. Before they will tell you if you have it, you have to click through, and they warn you in advance. Are you sure you really want this information? And they'll give you a little guidance that this, even if you have it, maybe it's not so critical, or there's other factors involved, so it doesn't mean 100% you're going to get breast cancer. Are you sure you want to see this information? So it's not like they just dump it out there without any kind of guidance, but there seems to be an understanding that they would like for people to have a personal genomics counselor involved, which is something that my older sister has just recently gone through as well. She sort of went the other route. She went through a professional, through insurance, because she had breast cancer. She's had a double mastectomy already, and turns out she doesn't have the genes either. So again, that's where none of this is perfect, right? I mean, none of this information on this prior page means 100% you're going to get anything, even if it would never be higher than 50% anyway, because most of the time you don't get, unless both your parents had the condition, you wouldn't be guaranteed to get anything, because you always get one copy from your mother and one from your father, right? So there's so many variables involved that you really do have to keep a level head